Turning Fire Emblem into a fighting game? Aren't there any more fitting IPs or genres to use instead? The Legend of Zelda is my favourite video game series of all time. How did I not connect the dots? People love The Legend of Zelda. They love its stories, its sense of adventure, exploration, dungeons, music, settings, and its characters. And what do people want from a cast as memorable as this? To see them deck each other in the face. Super Smash Bros. Is Nintendo's premier crossover fighting game, but our beloved Zelda's presence in this series could be better. Only 6 characters and 3 of them are variants of Link? They could add Impa, or the Skull Kid, or Tetra, Midna, Girahim, Tingle, any of the 4 champions, Rauru. I just listed off more characters than any franchise has in Smash. It'll take an extremely long time for Zelda in Smash to get 17 playable characters. That's within the average base roster size for a standalone fighting game. So why not make a standalone Zelda fighting game? Because there isn't significant overlap between Zelda fans and fighting game fans, maybe this'll be the game to create that overlap. Let me tell you, I am part of that overlap and I am confident that this game could be legendary. It has the characters with a vast range of designs, personalities and fighting styles. It has the scenic locales and the catchy songs for the backgrounds. It has a stash of items with more functions we could slap onto some characters to spice up their movesets. Granted, most of those were made for single-player adventure games, where combat is more of a means to an end, so making combat the main focus would require some translation work and possibly cause a tonal clash. Is what I would say if that hadn't already been done. Hyrule Warriors proves that my vision is onto something. But it also makes my vision rather redundant. We already have one combat-focused cross-game Zelda spin-off, why do we need another? They're different genres. I prefer fighting games to Warriors games. Some things from the Warriors games won't work in my game and vice versa. I promise I won't just copy Hyrule Warriors for this entire video. I also promise I won't just copy Super Smash Bros. Because that'd be redundant. Instead, I'm going to copy Guilty Gear and BlazBlue. Yes, the type of game I'm envisioning is a 2D one-on-one fighting game. I'm using those series as my base because they're my favourites, but also because their over-the-top mechanics make it easier to accommodate more fantastic abilities like many Zelda characters have. Characters move around with a walk, run, invincible backdash and a jump from which they can double jump or air dash. These are the standard options, but plenty of characters have exceptions. Characters attack using 4 buttons, light, medium, heavy and unique, that can be chained into each other in that order. They can beat attacks by blocking them and beat blocking by throwing the opponent. Unique attacks function like drive attacks from BlazBlue, tying into a central gimmick each character has. Normally I'm apprehensive about applying this idea to an existing franchise, but Zelda's characters are so distinct that it could just about work. This ties into why characters fight one-on-one, they're unique enough to stand on their own. This game does have motion inputs for special moves. In the main Zelda games, to pull off the quick spin attack, you have to rotate the analog stick in a full circle then press a button. That is a motion input, present in many fighting games. If you can understand a full circle motion, then you can understand a half circle and quarter circle. Then you probably have the right mindset to learn the more complex inputs like dragon punches. Each character has their own health bar and magic meter, this game's equivalent to a super meter. By spending half of this magic meter, they can perform super moves. Duh, that's standard fighting game stuff. All of this is standard fighting game stuff. Where's the Zelda influence? Typically, Zelda's combat emphasises dodging an enemy's attack and striking its opening. Breath of the Wild highlighted this with the Flurry Rush, a move we can port directly into this game. For a quarter magic meter, your character hops backwards and, if timed perfectly to an enemy attack, can retaliate. Alternatively, for half magic meter, you can attack straight out of blocking. Bigger than that though, what's the legendary object that everyone in Hyrule fights over? The Triforce. What are the 3 virtues it demands out of a worthy recipient? Power, wisdom, and courage. How could we test players for these in a fighting game? For power, we already have our answer: super moves. For wisdom, we're looking for something that rewards knowledge of the situation. This could be the Flurry Rush, but knowing the games I'm citing as influences, once you get hit, you're in for a long combo. You'll want a burst to get you out. As a visual touch, show a fairy popping out of your character like it's giving them a second chance at life. For courage, we want something that inspires perseverance in the face of hardship, like a comeback mechanic. I'll just copy the one from Persona 4 Arena here. When characters drop below 35% health, they gain a 50% boost to their defense and their maximum magic meter. If I'm adding mechanics themed after the Triforce, then there has to be a reward for combining them all. By spending 100% magic meter and 50% burst gauge while under 35% health, characters can unleash their ultimate Triforce move, the most devastating attack at their disposal. This is a solid mechanical base for a fighting game, although it's not too inventive or Zelda-like. I'll admit, I'm expecting the game's appeal to be carried by the Zelda IP, especially that crucial ingredient to a successful fighting game. Not quite. That's mainly important for getting people attached to your world, but since we're adapting an existing IP, that's not an issue. This spin-off won't be canon, so say the timelines converged again, like in Hyrule Warriors, to explain why characters from all over the series are here. There'll be a natural mix of heroes and villains, so it's not hard to justify them fighting each other. In fact, that's what I was alluding to earlier, Okay, that is important, but it's not what I was about to say. Make sure we have all the essentials, like versus matches, an arcade ladder, and a solid training mode, then make an adventure mode like Hyrule Warriors, where you travel around a map taking quests. It'd be great if we could create unique enemies for this mode, to serve as a tutorial on fighting game fundamentals. Sorry for these tangents, what I've been trying to get at all this time is the... Now we're talking! That key ingredient to a good fighting game is its cast of playable characters, not only for their aesthetics and stories, but for their movesets. This is why I'm so confident in this game idea. Zelda has this in spades. Where the base mechanics may have been generic, I expect the characters and their movesets to pick up the slack. First, we have to ask, how many of these characters do we include? You could say to pick a certain number of characters from every single game in the Zelda series. That is not a strict guideline I shall follow, but it's an easy way to get an estimate. As of the time of writing this video, there are 21 mainline Legend of Zelda games. The number of characters from each that speak out to me varies wildly. For some games it's 8, whereas for others it's 0. But let's average it out to 2 characters per game. That means launching our brand new, built from scratch 2D fighting game with 42 characters, which is a bit steep. Similar games released this decade have launched in the range of 11 to 21 characters. Where are Nintendo gonna find the resources to double Marvel? Besides, my estimate included a lot of spitball character suggestions without stopping to analyse what they'd bring to the table. A lot of those suggestions are going to be left on the cutting room floor. Taking all of that into consideration and completely guessing estimating the predicted sales numbers of this game, I deem it appropriate to aim down the middle, but ever so slightly on the safe end. Our Legend of Zelda fighting game shall launch with a base roster of 14 characters, starting with Link, Zelda, and Ganon. Obviously, the core trio of the series are our first 3 fighters. For characters with many different incarnations across the series, I'd prefer to keep them as generic composite versions that can reference aspects from all their appearances. Link, being the main character of the series, is our all-rounder Shortor, with the spin attack as his reversal and a shield charge as his gap closer. His unique attacks fire projectile beams from the Master Sword, which he supplements with his bow, boomerang, bombs and hookshot, as well as a roll that can switch sides with the opponent. Zelda leans more towards zoning, wielding a magical rod alongside her bow of light and a few light magic spells. Her unique attacks levitate her rod around the screen, then at the end of an attack string, she can recall the rod to replay the string in reverse while she's free to move around. Ganon is a big body with an appearance based on the classic games. Instead of running, his dashes teleport him and let him phase through the opponent. He performs his special moves with charge inputs, and his unique attacks spread malice. Then with a specific move, he can absorb this malice to temporarily power up. The more malice he consumes, the stronger he becomes, and for longer. Naturally, Ganon is the final boss of the arcade ladder, which leaves an opportunity open for a sub-boss, Ganondorf. This is your warning, this roster will have alternate versions of the same characters. For a series where a main plot point is a reincarnation cycle, it's to be expected. Ganondorf is another powerhouse who wants to get in and deal heavy damage. Instead of a double jump, he can momentarily hover in mid-air. If he hits his unique attacks, he applies gloom to the opponent that damages them over time. Although most of his attacks are melee sword swings, he does have one projectile, which of course you can play tennis with. As a footnote, if you play the arcade ladder as one of the villains, then the final bosses are swapped out for Zelda followed by Link. Impa. Another recurring face in the series, I imagine this game's Impa taking from her appearances in Hyrule Warriors and Age of Calamity. A glass cannon wielding a pair of Kodachi, a Naginata, a heavy sword, and for her unique attacks spawning shadow clones. That's all I have to say about Impa. Play her if you like ninja. Tingle. A good crossover can't have only the mainstays, it also needs some oddballs. For a series with as many oddballs as Zelda, this rings especially true, and Tingle is the clear cake taker. Does that make him not odd? He is the floatiest fighter on the roster, and his unique attacks tie balloons to the opponent, so they float too. His idea of fighting is more like flailing his limbs, dancing, and pulling random items out of hammer space, because if anyone in Zelda should have the random items gag, it's probably Tingle. Sheik. Now we can move on to one-off characters, and what better one to start with? Sheik's moveset mostly borrows from Super Smash Bros. She has her needles, teleports, that chain she used to swing. What's not taken from Smash is her unique ability, which lets her play the harp in the same fashion as the Ocarina of Time. Upon playing a song, she'll perform a special move based on the song played. For example, playing the Minuet of Forest spawns tree roots in front of her, while the Bolero of Fire produces an explosion. The Nocturne of Shadow makes her semi-invisible, and the Elegy of Emptiness places a statue that can absorb damage. Majora's Wrath. Every pick on this roster so far has been too agreeable. I need to make some controversial decisions. So yes, I'm using Majora's Mask without the Skull Kid. When building a roster for a game like this, I have to consider each character's playstyle, and Majora's Wrath, with its long whip arms and projectiles, is one of Zelda's clearest zoners. Its unique attacks place a timer on the opponent, and if they don't hit Majora before it expires, it detonates a follow-up attack. The longest timer comes on its Triforce move, which, if allowed to detonate, straight up, instantly kills the opponent. Said Triforce move is, of course, crashing the moon down. Young Link. The closest this game has to a clone character, Young Link shares most of his normal attacks with regular Link, but trades his projectiles for the transformation masks from Majora's Mask, making him this game's stance character. Each mask has a limited moveset built around one aspect of Young Link's game plan. Deku runs away and pelts projectiles, Goron rolls in using brute force, and Zora enforces relentless mix-ups. To complete the set, his Triforce move transforms him into Fierce Deity Link, a souped-up version of Hylian Link on a time limit. I have over-designed this character to the depths and back. Onox. You know, Twin Rover's general from Oracle of Seasons. Okay, he's an obscure pick, but a few obscure picks are good for a crossover like this. He's mainly being picked for his playstyle. With that sturdy armor and heavy ball and chain, he is our pure grappler. His mobility is severely limited, lacking a run or air dashes, but his unique attacks throw out then retract his ball, pulling the opponent right into his grabbing range. He can also make rocks fall from the ceiling, turn enemy projectiles into gale winds, and, for his Triforce move, transform into a dragon. Yeah, this is what's hidden beneath that armor. Wolf Link and Midna. The pair fight as one unit, with Midna riding on Wolf Link's back. Together, they're a fairly standard rushdown fighter. Wolf Link provides blinding speed, with a plethora of leaps and dashes and a barrage of bites, claw swipes, and unique attacks that home in on the opponent. Midna adds some range and power, using her hair arm to bash and toss the opponent around. Mineru. Of the many fan-favourite characters from Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, Mineru was an odd choice, but like Majora's Wrath and Onox, I'm choosing her for playstyle reasons. Specifically, I envision Mineru as this game's puppet character, the type who fights alongside a helper controlled simultaneously. In this case, Mineru's puppet is her construct form, controlled through her unique ability. The two can utilise the vast array of Zonai technology for better positioning, pressure, projectiles. They make a dynamic duo, provided you're willing to remap your controls. Girahim. He can do a lot. He moves fast, swings the sword fast, can parry, teleport, toss daggers, steal magic meter as a reference to his weapon snatching. What ties them together is his super, which readies 3 floating daggers. Normally his unique attacks make him conjure a dagger, but after using this super, he can shoot the next 3 independently of his current action. With this, he can extend combos, follow up from his parries, land teleport mix-ups. He can't escape being hit though, that wouldn't be fun. Also, he deals low damage and takes high damage, so you'd better play perfectly. To finish us off, we featured a lot of serious combatants, so let's round out this roster with a more light-hearted character. Pura. She brings to the fight an arsenal of Sheikah technology, including reprogrammed Guardian parts and the Sheikah Slate and its runes. She sets up contraptions around the stage, and can move them using Magnesis, her unique ability. One of her supers puts the opponent into stasis, and another initiates a countdown until the opponent gets blasted by a Guardian laser. If those aren't insane enough, her Triforce move attempts to use her de-aging rune on the opponent. If it deals enough damage to KO, the rune succeeds and presents you with a young version of every character in the game. Those are your 14 starting characters. Except, I'm feeling generous. Zelda is a massive franchise. Nintendo can afford a bit more budget and manpower to make these games. I could see the undefined developers of this imaginary game squeezing out a 15th character. Specifically, I could see them creating an original character. Zelda spin-offs have been known to introduce brand new characters. Furthermore, throughout this video, I've been citing the games of Arc System Works as influences, and Arc love to make new characters for their licensed games. It's not only about precedent, this gives the developers the perfect blank slate to write whatever ideas they want to put in the game onto. In case they can't find an existing character who fights a certain way, make up a new one. Now that is your 15 character starting roster for... Hang on, I never gave this game a name, did I? Triforce Tournament? Out of the gate, I think we've done a good job of balancing mainstays with one-offs, icons with oddballs, and capturing a spectrum of playstyles. Admittedly, half of the roster is variants of Link, Zelda, and Ganon, but it's a fairly small roster and I still tried to make them distinct. Now, this game is only missing one last element. Stages. In an adventure game, just as important as the characters you meet are the places you roam. In a fighting game of this style, stages are just a pretty backdrop with identical gameplay. Those backdrops are still important to the game's aesthetic, so I shall name 10 locations to be turned into stages. Many of these are based on recurring locales throughout the series, so like the recurring characters, these are generic composite takes. In addition, each playable character is associated with one home stage, where they're fought by default in the arcade and adventure modes. Hyrule Field is the home stage of Nobody, instead meant for random adventure mode encounters and a cool opening shot for the game's reveal trailer. Link is actually fought in front of the Great Deku Tree, where Tingle's also made his home. Like many Zelda games, this one's plot involves Ganondorf invading Hyrule Castle, forcing Zelda and Impa to flee and hide inside the Temple of Time. Sheik is also met there, just like in Ocarina of Time. Following this spin-off's timeline incident, Pura now resides in Kakariko Village, typically the home of the Sheikah. Why aren't Impa or Sheik here? I felt they made more sense with Zelda in the Temple of Time. Some one-off characters get the privilege of staying in their home worlds. Young Link and Majora's Wrath are fought atop Clocktown's tower, while Girahim is fought in Skyloft. Not on Ox though, he is stuck assigned to Death Mountain. Midna and Mineru are also found beside Lake Hylia, because I didn't bother giving them their own stages. Our last stage is a mysterious but revered location throughout the series, the Sacred Realm. It is our training grid, because that would be rather funny. I mean, it's a pocket dimension where one can obtain unmatched power. Do you know where else fits that definition? The hyperbolic time chamber from Dragon Ball. With that, our Legend of Zelda fighting game is ready for release. I'm still not sure how many people are looking for a game with that description, but now that they have it, I hope they love it. But will it leave them craving more? Will they be sad if their favourite characters are left out? Nintendo certainly won't be, because they can sell those characters for extra money. Yep, like any modern fighting game, Triforce Tournament is bound to have paid DLC. I went ahead and planned out 2 seasons, each containing 4 additional characters and 1 stage, roughly in line with other games like Marvel took on Fighting Souls. For Season 1, if we're releasing these characters in groups of 4, we might as well get the obvious out of the way. The 4 champions from Breath of the Wild. These are such no-brainers that you're probably asking why I didn't already include them in the base game. To that I say, I consider them a package deal. Either I include all 4, or I include none of them. With a base roster size of 15, dedicating over a quarter of that to one game felt excessive. I could have chosen one and given them the abilities of the others, but I feel all of them are too distinct and popular not to be playable individually. In fact, they're so popular that I confess, I'm banking on players gladly paying extra for them. Onto how they fight. Rivali is an archer who can fly, making him the most obnoxious fighter on this roster. His unique ability stocks his quiver with a sequence of normal, fire, ice or shock arrows, which his next arrow shots pull from in the order the player inputted. Ancient and bomb arrows are reserved for his supers. Daruk is a big guy who can roll, so he does his best impression of Blanka from Street Fighter. He can also create a chunk of rock in the ground, then smash it for a projectile attack. His unique attacks have guard points that enhance the moves if the opponent strikes them. Mipha is a mid-range fighter with unique attacks that heal herself and a water fountain that she can set up then teleport to. One of her supers creates a bubble on the stage that if she jumps in, she can freely swim through. Urbosa is the closest Guilty Gear is ever getting to bringing back Order Soul. Her unique ability charges a lightning gauge, which she then spends on upgraded special moves. For the champion's Triforce moves, they have to pilot their divine beasts. If all 4 of our fighters are from Breath of the Wild, let's complete the set and make this season's stage the Great Plateau Tower, with a good view of the sprawling open world. This should go without saying, but it's the home stage of all 4 champions. In case the player buys a DLC character separately from the season pass without buying their home stage, they're instead fought on a base game stage, that being Hyrule Field. That season was a mixed bag. Sure, I know tons of people wanted those characters in the game, but everything pulling from one game does dull the excitement of additional content. That's something I aim to rectify in Season 2. I've made sure to pull characters from across the franchise, shown best by its first one-up, Linkle. For how much I've borrowed from Hyrule Warriors, eventually I had to include one of its original characters. Linkle has moves for every situation. She kicks for close-up attacks and fires her crossbows for projectiles. Made up for this game, those crossbows are now fused with claw shots, reminiscent of the double claw shot from Twilight Princess. With these, she can not only pull the opponent in, but also pull herself along the edges of the screen with her unique ability. Beedle. We've had enough sensible choices in a row, it's time for another joke character. Beedle tries to fight by swinging his giant bag around and occasionally pulling out a slingshot, fishing rod and bug catching net. However, being a vendor, he operates in rupees. He earns these by hitting the opponent, then his unique ability spends them to level up each of his weapons, making their attacks stronger, faster, and adding new properties to them. In addition, he carries 3 bottles that he can catch enemy projectiles in, then release them against the opponent, or sell them for more rupees. Groose. A grappler with some actual mobility this time. Groose is graced with some tools to remedy traditional grappler weaknesses, notably his unique ability, the Gust Bellows. He can use this for quick bursts of speed, stalling in the air, and reflecting projectiles. He can also call for assist attacks from his 2 goons in his loft wing, and fire the Groosinator for a super. Before I reveal our last character, I'd like to get out of the way this season's stage. It is not the home stage of any of this season's characters. Those all use ones in the base game. Linkle gets Kakariko Village, reminiscent of her own home village. Beedle gets Lake Hylia, kind of reminiscent of the Great Sea. Obviously, Groose gets Skyloft. Instead, this season's stage is dedicated to a game that ended up missing out on a playable character. Tal Tal Heights from Link's Awakening. Yeah, that means Marine isn't our final character. There are still many options for who it could be, so whoever it isn't will inevitably upset some of you. Please trust that I considered several more characters than we discussed today. So before we wrap up, allow me to give one honourable mention. Morshoe. Lamp oil, rope and bombs are a genuine great base for a moveset. The rope gives him range, the bombs give him a projectile, and the lamp oil gives him a setup component. His unique attacks spill oil onto the ground, which he can then light on fire to control space and deal damage over time. Obviously, Morshoe will never make it in because Nintendo refused to acknowledge the CDI games. I apologise for that bait and switch, but at last we can ask, who is our final character? Which one's inclusion would be exciting enough to send Triforce Tournament off with a bang? In all the time I've been stalling, you might have guessed who. It's the one people have begged for since Hyrule Warriors. Vati. In this game he stays in his human form, but his attacks conjure elements from his other forms. He swings and plunges his giant arms for ranged attacks and sets up floating eyes as projectiles. These are then manipulated by his unique ability. He is a wind sorcerer, so straight up, copy Rachel's drive from BlazBlue onto him and let him blow the wind across the screen. Also his home stage is Death Mountain. I almost forgot to specify that. With Season 2 laid out, I say Triforce Tournament is complete, but the truth is I could keep going. There are still enough Zelda characters left to put at least 3 more season passes together. But I have to stop at some point, and I've chosen to stop earlier. What you've seen in this video are the concepts I'm the most proud of. The fact that I feel the need to cut this video short shows the sheer potential I feel a Legend of Zelda fighting game has. It's nearly a perfect match. Everything fits together so neatly that in the end, I barely struggled to build this concept. In a weird sense, does that make it a bad Zelda game? Zelda's known for often having long, troubled development cycles, and the triumph in solving those problems shows in the final games. If there's barely a challenge to overcome, will that make the final game weak? I suppose the real judges of that are you. In the event that Nintendo were to see this video and copy my idea wholesale, would you play the resulting game? Especially if you're a Zelda fan who's not into fighting games or vice versa, would this motivate you to cross the gap? Type your thoughts up into a neat comment and post it down below. Perhaps I've been barking up the wrong tree and you have better ideas for Zelda spin-offs or fighting game adaptations. In that case, I encourage you to expand upon those concepts. It's extremely exciting in the moment. Then you'll be extra crushed when the rights holders don't make your game for real. Maybe I should have just pitched this idea to Nintendo.